Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls all around the world. What's happening? What is going on? We are live and in effect this evening. Yes, we are. The place where we discuss pro basketball on a weekly basis, on a daily basis. We do it every day, whether it's here, whether it's on TikTok, or whether it's on the panel, on the Players Choice Network, on the Chilltown Hoops Network. We do it any and everywhere. We're all over the place. There is no place that you can't find me. You can definitely find me if you're looking for me. No doubt about that. So, with that being said, I had an interesting conversation that I want to discuss tonight because I want to talk tonight about the thing that I want to talk about tonight more than anything is I want to talk about how guys see themselves and how you see them. And when I say you, I mean you, the fan. How do you see these people in conjunction with how they see themselves? So I was able to catch a post with Damian Lillard, who I'm a fan of Damian Lillard. I actually went to go see Damian Lillard play numerous times in Portland. I saw him in 2015. I'm sorry. I saw him in 2015 up in Portland. I saw him again in 2016, the year that Russ won the league MVP. I was at that game. You would have thought that I would have took some pictures, but I didn't. I'm thinking to myself, this guy, when he comes into the league, he's phenomenal. But when I think about players, we have this tendency to forget that they're people, and people need acceptance. Whether you want to believe it or not, whether you buy in that logic or not, people need acceptance. That's why they have the Rookie of the Year. That's why they have the league MVP. That's why they have the Defensive Player of the Year. That's why they have all pro teams. That's why they have stuff like this, right? The reason why they have stuff like this is because these guys need acceptance. We all do. So with that being said, where do I think Damian Lillard is as a pro? So if you think about the guards of his generation, not just necessarily his generation, I'm thinking about the guards of the earlier generations. So like Magic, Isaiah, Stockton, Dennis Johnson, Mark Price showed up in '86. That was a damn good crop of guards, right? Damn good crop of guards. When we're talking about lead guards, and then you move to the '90s where you got Gary Payton, and you got Jason Kidd, and you got Steve Nash, and you got Tim Hardaway, you got Penny Hardaway, right? Stockton is still running around during that time. He's getting a little long in the tooth, but he's in his prime in the '90s, right? And then you move to the 2000s where you got guys like Jason Kidd, Steve Francis, Chauncey Billups, Steve Nash, Chris Paul, Darren Williams. Great crop of guards. Pardon me. And then you move to the 2010s when you have Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, Curry, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, Curry, Dame, John Wall, Rondo, Kyle Lowry, right? So when you have that era of guard, I've never heard these guys talk about themselves that, yo, I'm nicer than you dudes give me credit for. Like, I never heard Tim Hardaway talk about himself like that. Maybe he did. And to be honest with you, rightfully so. I understand it. I mean, I think Hardaway showed up in '89. I mean, I never heard Mark Price talk about himself like that. But if he did, rightfully so. Because, I mean, Mark Price being a 4-time All-Pro, I take being an All-Pro very seriously, guys. You know that about me. You know that. I take being an All-Pro very seriously. Even though I haven't heard these guys talk about themselves like that, I could dig it off the strength that these guys need to be accepted. But I let my game do the talking more than anything. I don't really have to. I don't have to boost myself, right? I don't have to tell you how nice I am. You can see how nice I am and judge for yourself. Now, if there's people who want to completely and utterly just disrespect you and go, yo, you weren't as good as a second or third rate guard when you were clearly elite, all right, that's something different, right? I think that that's something completely different. And then now you have to defend yourself, sure. And I see a lot of the guards today, and I see a lot of the players, not necessarily guards. Let me take that back. I see a lot of players today, right? I see a lot of players today who they let other people do that. They let other. Dwayne Wade is a prime example of that. Dwayne Wade is a guy who he will let you guys talk about what pantheon of guard he's in. I won't hear Dwayne Wade go, yo, I wasn't as nice as Kobe. I wasn't as nice as Jordan, but I'm nicer than all these other dudes. He'll talk about how good he was, and he'll talk about what he did, but it's up to you guys to place him. He's not going to do that himself. Nah, that's you saw me play, so that's a you thing. Now, when I think about Dame Lillard, people do for in his defense, you know, when you have a down season, people have a tendency to forget how nice you were. It was just a year ago, the year before he got to Milwaukee. I mean, he was 30. I think he was 33. I'm 32 and like 7, which I felt like he was going to play himself. We were talking about him being a top 10 player in the game. That was going on. That was a legit conversation about him being a top 10 player in the game. And the reason why is because he had earned that right. If I think about Damian Lillard throughout the course of from when he became elite, I'm going to say probably 15. I'll say 15. I feel like 15, 16, that's when he became elite, in my estimation. So when he becomes elite during that time, how long is Dame Lillard an elite league guard? I think he still is an elite league guard. I think that guys like Jalen Brunson, De'Aaron Fox, I think these guys have overtaken Dame off the strength of this one season. We wasn't talking about these dudes like this 2 years ago. When Dame was 32 a game, we wasn't talking about De'Aaron Fox like that with Dame. We wasn't talking about Ja like that with Dame. As good as Ja was, we wasn't talking about him like that with Dame. That he had just jumped Dame. Because no, he didn't. That's just not true, right? So when I think about when I think about where he falls in the pantheon of guards, and again, we're talking about during that era, Curry, Paul, Russ, him, John Wall, Lowry, Rondo. I'm talking about league guards. I want to put James Harden in that, but I think James is more of a combo guard, just like Curry is more of a combo guard. And I'll start the conversation when we talk about that with, I don't ever think he was better than Curry. I don't think that there was ever a time where we could have a conversation about him and Curry. Never. From his inception in the league, which was in 2012, up until today, I don't think that there was ever a time when there was a conversation between him and Curry, ever. Curry shot the ball better than him. Not only did Curry shoot the ball better than him, Curry was bigger in the clutch than him. I think he's a better scorer than him. I think he's a better playmaker than him. I think he's a better finisher at the rim than him. I think he gives you more effort on the defensive side of the basketball than him. And I just think that overall, as a player, and when they went up head to head, the series that did it for me, even though I didn't think that there was a conversation about this, the series that did it for me was in 2019. We completely dominated Dame Lillard, kicked his ass in the 2019 West Finals. In the 2019 West Finals, kicked his ass. I already felt like he was better than him anyway, and I don't think, I don't think that it was ever a conversation between them two, right? I don't think that there was ever a conversation between them two, but that series, if there was any doubt, or if there was any doubt, I think that series shut the door on that, right? I think if there was any doubt, that shut the door on that. And Sheldon, say that Dame had broke ribs in that series. Because them 4 games, they were up double digits going into the fourth quarter. Save it. I'm not trying to hear that. No. Go tell that to one of your friends. Because if they would have won, you wouldn't be saying a word about Damian Lillard having broke ribs. I'm not trying to hear that. I'm not. I will not listen to that. No, that is not something that I'm entertaining. But anyway, so I don't think that it was a conversation between him and Curry. I'm going to take Chris Paul ahead of him. I think Chris Paul on the defensive side of the basketball, I think that makes up for everything offensively. Because offensively, I think it's close. I think as a scorer, I think Dame was better than Chris Paul. I think as an overall shooter, he was better. But I feel like the gap between Dame and Chris Paul, the fact that Chris Paul is so much better defensively, the gap offensively closes. And if I had to choose between the two, I think Dame was, again, I think Dame was a more efficient long ball shooter. I think Chris Paul was money in the mid range, but I think Dame was just as good in the mid range. Now I think Dame was just as good in the mid range as Chris Paul, even though Chris Paul had a money mid range game. Money. Um, I don't think he was better than James Harden. No. I think that we can have a conversation about James Harden in the 1920 season. I think at that point, I mean, Dame's in the league in the 2019-2020. He's in the league 7 years. He's in his prime at that point. And I think we can have a conversation. Excuse me. I think we can have a conversation about Damian Lillard and James Harden. And James Harden, I'm sorry. I think we can have a conversation about that. But from 16, 17, 16, 17, 17, 18, 18, 19, I don't think that there's a conversation. And this is the time when Damian Lillard, I think in 18, Damian Lillard was first team All Pro. I don't think that he was close to James Harden at that point. 2019, 2020, when they went in the bubble, I think that we can have a conversation, but I'm putting James Harden ahead of Damian Lillard. It gets tricky. Like I said, I don't think he was as good as Curry. I'm taking James Harden ahead of him. I'm going to give Chris Paul the edge. It gets dicey when we talk about Russ. I think he was better than Russ. I think he was better than Russ in the stop and pop game. I think Russ was better in transition at the rim. I don't think Russ was a better one-on-one player than Damian Lillard. I think that the volume for Russ being able to distribute, I think that I'll give him that over Damian Lillard, but I think Dame was smarter. I do think he was a better scorer than Russ. I do think he was better with the basketball than Russ. Russ gave me more effort on defense, but Russ would also throw a monkey wrench in whatever we were doing. I think Dame, even as good as Russ was, because there was a stretch where, and a lot of you guys won't give Russ credit for this, but Russ could knock down the mid-range. Russ had a good stop and pop game, especially in transition. I think Dame's was better. And I definitely think Dame was better in transition off the three ball. Definitely. I'm gonna take Dame over Russ off the strength that I think Dame headier, better with the basketball, better pull-up game in both the long ball and the mid-range. I think Russ was a better scorer. I think Russ was a better finisher at the rim. But other than that, I'm taking Dame at the lead guard spot. And exactly like I said, the same logic that I gave you with what Russ did, the same logic I gave you with what Curry did to him in the 19 West Finals. I think I got to use that same logic with what Dame did to Russ in the playoffs in 2019. Kicked Russ's ass. Kicked his ass and showed him the door. Not only did he outplay him, showed him the door. There you go. That's as far as I'm going. I think he was better than Irv. I think he was better than Rondo. I think he was better than Kyle Lowry. I think he was better than John Wall too. But again, when you're talking about when you're talking about if a guy is overrated, the question that needs to be answered is where do you have him rated? I think he's a top 5 guard of his era. I think he's a top 5 league guard of his era. Now, when you're talking about overall guards, right? When you're talking about overall guards, yes, he was better than Derrick Rose. 100% he was. Derrick Rose does not have the body of work, and Derrick Rose is more of a what if than he was anything. So when I think about what Damian Lillard did, and I had this conversation earlier about Damian Lillard being a top 75 player. So of the top 75 guys, I know that people talk about. I know that people talk about how Dwight Howard should have been on the top 75 list, right? People talk about how Dwight Howard should have been on the top 75 list. I won't argue that. I think he should have been too. Not at the expense of Dame Lillard, though. No, somebody else got to come off that list. Yes, because I do think Damian Lillard. If I'm looking at the top 75 players, I'm having a difficult time with this list. With this list, and thinking who comes off the list. I mean, who could come off this list for Damian Lillard, right? That's what I'm thinking. Who could like Dave DeBusschere, Lenny? I think he was better than Lenny Wilkins. The point guard for the Detroit Pistons in Dave Bing. I think Dame was better than him. I do. Those are a few guys that I'm thinking about. But again, when I think about where he's rated, or is he overrated? That's where it gets tricky, because some people may overrate him. Let me before I go any further, guys, let me tackle this super chat real quick. This super chat is from Shane Howard. Shane says, "What up, OG? I have a question. Was there ever a time you felt Rondo was the best point guard in the league? Where would you rank him all time of guards, and where would you rank him all time of passers?" So there was never a time when I felt like Rondo was the best league guard in the game. No, there was never a time when I felt like that. There was a time when I felt like he was at the he was in that conversation, like when he was running with that Celtic team for that stretch. There was a time when I did feel like that, but I don't feel like he was better than Darren Williams. I don't feel like he was better than Chris Paul. This was during that time. And remember, Rondo showed up in 2004, right? Rondo showed up in 2004. And great defender, could be a little careless with the basketball. I got no problem with that because in order to get to where you're trying to go, you got to take chances. And Rondo was the epitome of that. But I don't ever think that he was the best lead guard in the game. Where do I rank him all time amongst lead guards? You said amongst guards. Well, that's tricky because when we're talking about guards, we're talking about Magic. Let's see, we're talking about Magic. We're talking about Jordan. We're talking about Magic. We're talking about Bryant, Curry, Oscar, Jerry West. Guards. That's all we're talking about here. Guards. Dwayne Wade. And I think Dwayne Wade was better than Jerry West and Oscar Robertson. I ain't even talking about lead guards, just guards. Reggie Miller, Drex. Let's see. Ray Allen. Just guards. Ray Allen. Now, if you want to talk about point guards, Shane, so Magic, Isaiah, Stockton, Oscar, excuse me, Magic, Isaiah, Stockton, Oscar, Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, Chris Paul, Gary Payton, Walt Frazier, Tony Parker, Bob Cousy. I think Bob Cousy's top 10, actually, to be honest with you. I think Bob Cousy goes ahead of Tony Parker. That's 11. I said Isaiah already. I think there's a case for him as a top 15 guard, as a top 15 league guard. Was he better than Mark Price? He was a better defender than Mark Price. Mark Price was better in the pick and roll. He was better off the bounce. He was a big shot maker. He was better off the bounce. He was better in transition. Yeah, I do have Tony Parker over Rondo. Yes, I do. Mark Price was better off the bounce. Mark Price was better in the pick and roll. Mark Price was better in the pick and pop. As a distributor, I think Rondo was a better distributor than Mark Price. And I think he was a better defender. White Chocolate isn't in this conversation, Holy. If you just want to shout him out, I take no issue with that. I'll shout out White Chocolate for you. Yo, shout out to White Chocolate. Shout out to Jason Williams, the wizard with the basketball. Shout out Jason. Shout out Jay Williams, right? Shout out Jason Williams. He was a wizard with the basketball, super nice with the ball. So I'll shout Jason Williams out for you, no problem. But he's not in that conversation with any of these guys. No, he isn't. I think Rondo was better than Mark Jackson. I do. So I think that Rondo, if I'm talking about him as a lead guard, I think we can have a conversation about him top 15. Yes, I do think definitely top 20. I don't think that there's 20 league guards in NBA history better than Rondo, but definitely top 15. Definitely top 15. As a passer at the lead guard spot, so he wasn't better than Magic. I don't think he was a better passer than he wasn't better than Magic. I don't think he was better than Isaiah. He wasn't better than Stockton. He wasn't better than Oscar. He wasn't better than Nash. He wasn't better than Jason Kidd as a distributor. Was he better than Cousy? That I'm having a difficult time with that. I don't know if Rondo was a better distributor than Cousy. But if you want to go with Cousy was way ahead of his time. Way ahead of his time. The Houdini of the hardwood. But if you want to go with Cousy, that's fine. I don't think he was a better distributor than Chris Paul. I don't think he was a better distributor than Walt Frazier. I don't think he was a better passer than Gary Payton either. And we're just talking about league guards. Yeah, I don't think he was a better passer than Gary Payton. He wasn't a better passer than Steve Nash. That's as far. That's probably as far as I'm going to go when I think about league guards. So yeah, that's as far as I'm going to go with them. But back to Damian Lillard. So where is Damian Lillard rated? Because I hear him saying that he's a guy who we quote unquote have forgotten about. And there's people who, don't like consistency. That's not true. I couldn't disagree with that. Excuse me. I couldn't disagree with that more because consistency what makes you great. People don't have a problem with James being consistent as he was. People don't have a problem with KD being as consistent as he was. People don't have a problem with James Harden and Luka being consistent as they were. In fact, the issue is when you're not around, people don't get bored with you when you are consistent. What they get bored with is they kind of become over if you're not winning. You being as good as you are, that never goes away. That's why Russ stayed relevant because he was so damn good. But the knock on Russ was that he couldn't get it done. He couldn't win. That's the knock on him. And I think that I think Dame, he overrates himself because I think he looks at guys like Curry, guys like James Harden, and he thinks he's that nice. Like he thinks he's Curry nice, right? I think Damian Lillard is convinced that there's not much of a difference between him and Steph Curry. I don't think that he sees much of a difference between him and James Harden. I don't think he sees much of a difference between him and Chris Paul. I don't think that he sees himself that much different than these guys. Now, that's where the objective eye comes in. Because of course, he's looking at this with a subjective eye because we're talking about you specifically. So of course, he's going to look at himself like, yo, I'm so much nicer than them dudes. Of course he's going to say that. And the reason why he's going to say that is because we're specifically talking about him. But that's where the lines get blurred. And the reason why they get blurred is because you see yourself in a different light than other people see you, especially the masses. Now, don't get me wrong. There are people who can be wrong, right? There are people who can be wrong. And I watched Damian Lillard. I watched James Harden. I watched Chris Paul. I watched Dame. I watched Rondo. I watched Kyle Lowry. I watched John Wall. I watched Isaiah Thomas. Them dudes like Isaiah Thomas and not Detroit Pistons Isaiah Thomas. I'm talking about Celtics Isaiah Thomas, John Wall, Rondo, Kyle Lowry. Them dudes wasn't Dame Lillard nice. No. Mm-mm. And Rondo was a mother, you know what. Rondo was a mother, you know what. But he wasn't, I don't think he was better than Damian Lillard. No, as a league guard. So with that being said, right? With that being said, where the lines get blurred, excuse me, where the lines get blurred is you see a guy and you have an objective opinion about him if you don't have a guy of your own. But if you do, right? If you do have a guy of your own, then you're going to be subjective. Dame is already coming into this subjective. He's basically reminding us of why he is this nice. And the fact that we're going into the 24-25 season. 2 of the last 4 seasons, he's missed the season. He's had a season-ending injury. He had it with the ab, and then in 22-23, he went out again. They shelved him. He got busy that year. And that was the year that I felt like he had played himself back into the top 10. What we can't do with Damian Lillard is we can't ignore that there was a stretch where he was a top 10 player in the game. That's elite. That is definitely elite. There was a stretch for Damian Lillard where he was a top 10 player in the game. That's why I said, right? That's why I said Damian Lillard. That's why I said Damian Lillard was going to play himself back into the top 10. This was last year. That's why I said that. So I understand I do understand the concern for where Dame is, but I do have another super chat that I have to read. This is from Jim Brown. He says, Rondo over Andre Miller. If yes, why? He was a better defender. I think that he was a better distributor than Andre Miller. I think that he was a better athlete than Andre Miller. I think he was craftier than Andre Miller. I think that he played better, not just in space, but I think that he was more of a mismatch because he could play on the block. Defensively, I feel like he was more versatile than Andre Miller because he was a better athlete. He could guard two guards. He can guard lead guards and twos, and in some situations he can guard threes. Andre Miller wasn't that. So if I had to choose between the two, I'll take Rondo over Andre Miller. Yep. Not all day, but I do think that Andre Miller. I do think Andre Miller was great. But I think the issue that we have, like when I see questions like this, or when I see questions like this sounds to me like you want to shout somebody out. Like, was there ever a time when Andre Miller, and my question to you is, was there ever a time when Andre Miller was in the upper echelon of league guards? And what I mean when I say that is, there was a time when we talked about Rondo being the best league guard in the game. I don't think he was, but there was a stretch where I feel like there was a legit conversation with him, Paul, Curry. There was a time when that was going on, right? There was definitely a time when that was going on. So I do understand it. That I do understand. But the idea that these guys overrate themselves, right? The idea that these guys overrate themselves. Rondo was better than Kenny Anderson too. Kenny Anderson was a better ball handler, but Rondo was better than him. Yes, he was. And I'm not one of these dudes who you can. I'm not one of these dudes who you can talk about Kenny Anderson to me with, because I'm a Kenny Anderson stan. You want to talk about Kenny Anderson? I'm one of the biggest Kenny Anderson fans that there is. Rondo was better than him. He was 100%. He was better than him, and I don't think it's a wash. But yes, he was better than Kenny Anderson. Rod Strickland. I think that's a little bit of a. I think that's a little closer. Strick was nice with the pill. Strick was a little bit better of a defender. Strick could actually score the basketball. So. Anyway, I want to hear from you guys though. Is Damian Lillard overrated? Where do you have him rated as a player, as a league guard? That's the question that I have. Where do you have Damian Lillard rated? That's the $1 million question. What up?
What's going on, OG?
What up?
You got it. Yeah, man. So I see this happening a lot, especially since the whole top 75 thing. I think Dame is definitely overrated. He doesn't have the accolades. He's never made it to the finals. I mean, his biggest things are like, the Sports Center game-winning moments, but not when it counts the most, right? So you can send people home in the semifinals and in the first round, all those great things. But again, they're great moments. Right. But like you said, what has he done? You know what I mean? So he's not. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, he has done. He has done a ton. I mean, Dame showed up in 12. I think we're going into year 13. He's been an All-Pro 7 out of the 13 years. That's half my career. That's every other year I'm an All-Pro. And with me being an All-Pro suggests to me that I'm playing at an elite level if I'm making an All-Pro team every other year of my career. I'm playing at that level. So I take being an All-Pro very seriously.
So you're saying like all NBA, like second team, third team?
And he was I think he was first team in 18.
Yeah, because
Eight.
Steph was hurt. Steph was hurt, and Kyrie was either out for refusing the shot or what's the name.
Okay, so Steph wasn't hurt in 18. I think that was the year he was the first team All Pro, and that was during Steph, and that was during Steph. That was during Chris Paul, and that was during Curry. All of those guys were in the league and they were healthy. That was the year that they won the NBA championship in 18 with Curry. And I think and Damian Lillard was first. Dame was first team All Pro that year.
First team. Dame made it over Steph that year. That's crazy.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yes,
so that's
sir.
even itself. So even the judges was drinking the Kool-Aid because that's ridiculous. What
now,
are you saying here?
Now remember, this is what I mean when I talk about him being close to Curry. I don't think that there was ever a time.
He's not.
I don't, and you can't convince me. Even though he was first team All Pro, I don't think that there was ever a time where he was better than Steph Curry. I just don't. No.
Yeah, I would agree. Like anybody that understands basketball will understand that. Anything that he can do, Steph can do way better. Steph's more efficient. Steph's even a better passer, right? I think Steph runs a better offense, and Steph can adapt better in game than he can, right? And and most importantly, like I say, the clutch gene or hit the big shots when you need the big shots hit.
And I can still recognize, I can still recognize you being an All Pro and being fantastic. I can still recognize that 100% because I've done that in the past. I saw Latrell Sprewell be first team All NBA. He was never at any point better than Drex, ever. Never. At no point was he ever better than Drexler, ever.
And it's crazy. Why don't we talk PGs? But let's people have forgotten about Clyde Drexler. I think it's a big thing in I guess Portland being a small market, and then he was on the later years with the Houston part.
Right.
But people don't understand. I have him fourth all time. I have him fourth all time in shooting guards.
That's where I got him. I got him at
exactly. And like I said, but to the PG point, I think if I had to rate Dame all time, he could be in the top 15. I would put him, and I would ask. So I have a question for you too. So when we assess Rondo, right?
Yep.
I say Rondo was the last pure point guard because everything after that pretty much came the combo guard. I say 2000 era, you had more the combo guard thing, especially with Steve Nash. Efficiency, can pass the rock. You know what I'm saying? All the things and so on and so forth. But they were dependent upon and looked to score first. You see what I'm saying?
Am I out of line if I think Steve Nash was a better version of Mark Price?
No, you're right on. You're on time.
Because I feel like the distribution was there. Steve Nash was not a score-first league guard. Steve Nash was definitely a distributor, but could score very much like Mark Price, right? So when I think about the league guard, and I actually had this conversation with my man Damo when he asked me, Chill, do you think if I would have said to you 20 years ago that the future of the league guard is Gilbert Arenas, would you have bought that? I would have like, hell no. That's not what the league guard is going to look like, only except that's exactly what the league guard looks like today.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it looks like today, which is kind of crazy to me. So now that's what I have to go off of. I have to go off of more of a score first, distribute second, and how much you distribute. Not just how much you distribute, but the quality of your distribution. It can't just be no. Like, is it leading to anything? Does it mean anything when you're doing it? Because when I think about a guy like Damian Lillard, I mean, he was 30 and 8, 28 and 7. And they were making the playoffs. They were winning 50 games. They were winning 55 games in a nightmare Western Conference.
Yeah.
Now they would get into the playoffs, and then it would get kind of tricky because they would get a bad matchup. But with that being said, he still was playing at a high level. Still playing at a high level. I feel like with Dame, and when we're talking about rating guards, it's important to mention how you stack up with these guys with what they do best. Just like I told you, I don't think that we could ever have a conversation between him and Curry.
Yeah, and I also never gonna close that gap.
I just don't. I'm sorry. I
don't think anybody that understands it. And like I said, I think Dame because of those big shots, he does have a solid fan base. I'll say that too.
Sure. Sure.
And man, I just say for Dame for me, like I said, he's never been better than Curry. He didn't get better than Westbrook until I think post what was it? Did he go to Houston first or Washington first?
I think that this is where it gets tricky for me because I think he was better than Russ. And I do think that Russ was a better finisher at the rim than him. But when we talk about from 16 to 20, from even that year that Russ won the league MVP,
MVP?
from 16 to 20, I mean, I think those were Dame's peak years, right? And
Yeah, but
I,
Russ was doing so much, and then Russ has always been a much better defender. That's what I'm saying. So
that part right there is where you might get me. The fact
yeah,
that the gap, but when I rebut with that, Mr. Fantastic, is when I think about Russ coming into the league, Russ came into the league very much like Donovan Mitchell. He was an all-league defender in the Pac-10. Why that didn't translate to the pro game, I really felt like he was going to be that too, like in a Jason Kidd mode. Even though he got moved over to the league guard, I felt like Russ could have been a better defender. He was better than Damian Lillard, but I felt like he could have been better. That's why I'm having a difficult time with the gap being that wide.
okay.
So,
well, still, like you said, even though Russ was a horrible passer, he was a terrible passer. I think he's the epitome of what you're talking about, where like, hey, you're getting these assists, but it's not really leading to much. It looks good on the stats, but like I said, if you understand basketball, it's not, you know what I'm saying? It's like a last minute ditch effort. You got big ass, my bad, I'm sorry. You got big Steven Adams down there, you know what I'm saying? Which, you know, brick house at the rim to just dump it off to when you jumping in the air and trying to make the pass at the last minute.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, man, I think Dame's definitely got his due. To the point we're at now, he's going to be a Hall of Famer for sure.
Sure.
So, I don't know, man. Like I said, he's definitely getting his especially like, damn, I didn't even know that, man. I got to go back and see this. He made all NBA first team in 2018. That's crazy. I didn't even know that.
Yes, sir.
So that's wild.
It's one of those 3 years. It's either 17, 18, because I know James Harden was on it in 19. It was 17, 18, or not. One of those 3 years, he was first team All Pro. One of those 3 years. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's wild.
Good to talk to you, brother. You know where to find me at.
For sure.
Absolutely, brother. I think we have I think we have a difficult time. I have a difficult time when it comes to guys reminding me of who they are. Like saying it. Like, I know how nice you were. I was around when you were playing, and I watched you. I know how good you were. Sure. 100%. And I could be objective when it comes to rating a guy like you. Yeah, I remember how good you were. 100% I do. What up?
What up, Unc? How we doing tonight?
What's up, brother?
So I just tuned in. I didn't really get to hear much of what you were saying on your opinion on this. So do you think he's overrated?
It depends on where you have him rated. If you think that he's a top 10 league guard all time, yes, I do think he's overrated. If you think he's a top 15 league guard all time, we can definitely have that conversation. I think that's where he is. If you think during his era of Curry, Paul, him, Russ, Irv, Rondo, Lowry, I feel like I'm leaving somebody out. Of those 7 guards, John Wall, if you think that he's top 2 or top 3, I think he's overrated. But if you think that if he falls anywhere between 3 and 4, then I take no issue with that. None whatsoever.
Gotcha. Yeah, I haven't really tried like ranking him myself, so I don't really know where I would put him. But I feel like in a general sense, when people talk about Dame, like they kind of know what he's done and they respect it, but I don't think he's overrated. And I guess in just like the public's view of him is what I'm saying.
Right.
Because like a lot of people make the jokes about 0 rings. Like, you know, people know Dame's impact still though.
Sure.
So,
but I think the biggest problem we have with the 0 rings, that's a Dame thing.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that team that he was on, I mean, I feel like they were good enough to compete. But the problem that we have is Dame never committed himself to playing championship level defense. He never did.
Yeah.
Never committed himself to that. And I think that's the difference between him being a champion and not just him being a champion, but him getting to that championship level.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference. Because if you look at Steph Curry, I mean, Steph Curry wasn't an all-league defender. He did commit on the defensive side of the ball, though. 100% he did.
Yeah, you got his steals when he had to.
Dame didn't do that. And I think that was the difference. That 19 West Finals showed me that was the best opportunity I felt like he had to win the NBA championship. And for them to get dominated like they did in that series, where they basically got swept out of the playoffs, and he got his ass kicked by Steph Curry, I was out. I was out. I already thought Curry was better than him anyway, and I had seen him in the playoffs against him in 16. I think that series Curry missed some games, or it was either he missed some games or Dame missed some games. But in 19, in 19 closed the book for me. If the book was ever partly open, it was closed in. So good to talk to you though, brother. I appreciate
Yes, sir.
it. Yeah. If the book was ever partially open for me, 19 closed it. It was over in 19, because I knew at that point, I mean, we're in a space where this is probably the best that he's gonna be. This is the best version of him. He got his ass kicked. He got his ass kicked. Not only did he get his ass kicked by Curry, when he was at his best, I mean, Drew Holiday kicked his ass. Drew Holiday kicked his ass 6 ways from Sunday. Now, what we'll hear is he got blitzed, right? What we'll hear is he was getting doubled. Yeah, that was part of the scheme. But if we're being honest, a lot of the scheme was you and Drew. That was a lot of it. A lot of the scheme was Drew dealing with you one-on-one, fighting over screens. Drew dealing with you coming downhill. Drew dealing with you in transition. And he dealt with you. Completely dealt with you. Like I said, I actually had a conversation about some of the biggest meltdowns that I had seen in NBA history. And I'm on record saying in 2011, I had never seen anything like what I saw with James. I didn't recognize who he was. I didn't. I was actually watching that series going, who is this dude? I don't know who that is. Because that's not James. That's not the James that I know. And right after him, when I saw Dame in 2018 in the Western Conference opening round, when I watched Drew Holiday and that New Orleans team kick his team's ass and make him completely and utterly irrelevant. Make him completely and utterly irrelevant. When I saw that, right? When I saw that, I was flabbergasted, right? I was flabbergasted. Shelvin, stop talking to me like Damian Lillard. So Shelvin wants to be a part of the show. So this is what Shelvin says. Shelvin says Dame was getting doubled that whole series. Has Damian Lillard, throughout the course of his career, whether it's in the playoffs or it's in the regular season, has Damian Lillard not seen double teams? Have we ever seen a stretch where Damian Lillard is not used to seeing double teams? Are they throwing different doubles? Were they throwing different double teams at Damian Lillard? No, they weren't. No, they were not. Now, don't get me wrong. At that point, you had two of the best defenders in the game in both Drew Holiday and Anthony Davis. But you also had the best. When you're talking about the best of the best, he was one of the best offensive players in the game. I think that was the 28-7 year. And he knows how to pass the ball, right? He knows how to get off the basketball. But with him knowing how to get off the basketball, he also had open looks because he wasn't blitzed every play. That's just not true. No, he wasn't. And Damian Lillard is one of the better players in the NBA who knows how to play within the double team. He knows how to split the double. And I can appreciate, right? I can appreciate how good, right? I can appreciate how good both Drew Holiday and Anthony Davis are. I can appreciate how good they are in the double team. What I can't appreciate is how bad he was. For a guy who has seen double teams throughout the course of his career, for a guy who has seen double teams and seen him getting blitzed before. He's been blitzed by KG and Rondo. He's been blitzed by Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. He's been blitzed throughout the course of his career in playoff series. And for him to play as bad as he played, not just in the blitz, but also one-on-one. I'm good, Shelvin. I'm straight. Go talk to somebody else about this. Because what you're trying to sell me is you're trying to give me excuses on what was wrong. When you're leaving out stuff like Anthony Davis dominated on the front line. You're leaving out how good CJ McCollum was in that series. and how bad Damian Lillard was. You're leaving that out. And that part right there is why I'm done having the conversation with you. I'm good. So, with that being said, right? With that being said, what up, Jay? What's going on, Jay? How you doing, brother? I feel like a lot of guys in not just today's game, but overall, I hear a lot of people saying stuff like is underrated. Is overrated. Well, they could be overrated depending on where you have them rated. They could be underrated depending on where you have them rated. Right? So when I think about when I think about where I rate a guy, I definitely go over, okay, what has he done compared to everybody else? What has he done for his era? And how does that match up with what everybody else in terms of elite guards? How does that match up? Right? How does that match up with what everybody else has done? And that matters. 100% that matters. And Jim tells me I think Rondo is overrated on my list. Name 15 point guards better than him. Go ahead. Name 15 point guards better than Rondo. And I'll actually give you some help, right? I'll give you some help. Magic, Zeke, Stockton, Oscar, Kidd, Nash, CP, Cousy, Frazier, Tony Parker, Gary Payton. Did I say? I said Walt Frazier. Dennis Johnson, Dame. That's as far as I'm going. I think Rondo was better than Mo Cheeks. I do. I think Rondo was better than Mo Cheeks. Yes, I think he was better than Norm Nixon. Yes. When we're talking about league guards, Tiny Archibald is top 15 too. 100%. Tiny Archibald is definitely top 15. He's a top 15 guard. So with that being said, right? So with that being said, I'd like to know if you can name me 15 guards better. Kevin Johnson was not better than Rondo. No, he wasn't. No. Nope. I'm not giving you KJ over Rondo. Nope. No, I'm not. I'm not doing that. No doubt. I'm not doing that. And yes, he was better than Tim Hardaway also. I'm good on Tim Hardaway. Tim Hardaway wasn't better than KJ, to be honest with you, if we're doing that. Yes, Tim Hardaway was not better than, I don't think Tim Hardaway was better than KJ. No doubt about that. I know that we have I know that we have teams that when you look at these teams, I know that we have plenty of reasons why teams win the NBA championship, right? I know we got plenty of them. And I had a conversation about did I say Westbrook? I didn't say Westbrook. Westbrook is definitely a top 15 guard. Definitely a top 15 guard. Anyway, so when we talking about winning NBA championships, and I thought this was really interesting because I had a conversation, right? I had a conversation, and it basically got my blood pressure up because I never heard, right? I've never heard a player who was the best player on a championship team talked about how Jason Tatum is talked about. And I am in the minority when I feel like I do think that there's a conspiracy to break up the Boston Celtics. I do believe that. I'm not on the fence about that. I'm not thinking maybe. I'm not thinking possibly. I do think that there is a conspiracy to break up the Boston Celtics. Could it be because they may be? Could it be because maybe, just maybe, they might be up next, and there are some people who don't want to see that? Could that possibly be it? Maybe. But I think it's great for the NBA, though. Right? I think that's great for the NBA. If teams like the Lakers, if teams like the Celtics, the Knicks, when these teams are good, this is fantastic for the NBA. It just is. When you have a media market, and don't get me wrong, Boston isn't a huge city. I think, if I had to guess off the top of my head, I think it's 500,000 people, maybe 600,000 people live in the city of Boston. I mean, that's I think that's a third of Brooklyn. That's not even that big. But because of their storied history, right? Because of their storied history and because of how good they've been, it's great for TV. So I can't say that I've heard in my life the best player on a championship team be ridiculed the way that Jason Tatum has been ridiculed. He's not elite at anything. Not carried, but he just isn't very good. And I'm listening to this and I'm thinking to myself, I must be in the Matrix, because I've never heard anything like this before. Never. 650,000. What did I say? 600,000, Jim? 600. So 650,000. That's a third of Brooklyn. In fact, that's actually less than a third of Brooklyn. So you wouldn't think that Boston is a major media market when the city barely has over 500,000 people living there. Meanwhile, there's more people living in Manhattan than in the borough of Manhattan, not the state of New York, but just the borough of Manhattan, not the borough of Brooklyn. Because even though there's more people living in the borough of Brooklyn, even though the borough of Brooklyn, I think Brooklyn got like 2 million people or something like that, 1.5 million people, something crazy like that. The fact that Boston would be such a huge media market, I think that's pretty incredible. I do. I think that's pretty incredible. But anyway, I've never heard of a player being the best player on a championship team, not a championship contender, not a championship caliber team, but the fact that he's a champion, and the discontent that people have for him, that's incredible to me. Like, wow, that is definitely the one of the few people that I remember that being about. I remember Bryant having that kind of people not being appreciative of Bryant. That's why I have such a problem when I hear people talk about the love that Bryant gets, and it bothers me, because I'm thinking to myself, where were you guys at when he was around? Because he 100% needed you guys. Why didn't you love him like this when he was here? Why didn't you treat him the way you treating him now that he ain't around no more? Why didn't you treat him like this when he was here? That's the issue that I have with the whole. And there was a lot of discontent for Bryant. There was. But with that being said, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he plays for the Celtics. I mean, if he played in Portland, if he played in Sacramento, if he played for Toronto. No, he wasn't, Jim. No, he was not. No, he was not, Jim. No, he wasn't. That's a lie. That's a bold-faced lie. No, he was not. He was beloved and appreciated after he left the game. He wasn't when he was there. So no, he was not. More people hated him than they loved him. So that's not true. That's a lie. That's a bold-faced lie. That's not misinformation. That's not you misremembering. That's a lie. He was not loved and appreciated. People hated him, and they hated him for a different reason. They ain't hate him because of his game. They hated him for different reasons. So that's just not true. Not true, and I'm not trying to hear that. Not trying to hear that. So where you from, Duke? Where you from? When was Duke? Let me ask you a question. You said where you from, he was beloved and appreciated. When was that? Answer the question, Duke. When was that? Because I can tell you right now, I was around when he was on that Laker team when they had Shaq. And he wasn't. When Shaq departed, I was around when that was going on. I was there. He wasn't. He was not. Now, of course, if you from that town, I mean, that's like with Larry Bird. I mean, everybody didn't love Larry Bird. No. Everybody did not love Larry Bird. They didn't. No, they did not love him. We grew to love him, but we didn't. So, anyway, it's about that time for me, guys. Y'all know what time it is when y'all see me. It's about that time for me. I got to bounce. It was good to see you guys tonight. And you know where to find me at. If I'm not here, I'm on a panel from 8 to, I'm on a panel from 11 to 2, Monday to Friday. But before then, Monday to Friday, 9 a.m., I'm on TikTok Live. It's called Good Morning NBA. I 100% do that. If I'm not there, this is where I am. On Chilltown Hoops, Monday night. Tuesday night, I'm with my man, Tony Tone. We do Fluent and Chill right here on both the Sports Fluent Network and on the Chilltown Hoops Network. We do it on both of them. And on Saturdays, I'm with my man, Big Ox, on the Players Choice Network. We do Chill with Chill, 12 o'clock Eastern. I'm not hard to find, guys. Not at all. So if you're looking for me, I'm not hard to find at all. I will see you guys soon. But until then, put on a suit, drink water, don't drink and drive. Hey, man, call your mother. When last time you talked to your mother? Call your mother. I will talk to you guys soon, man. But until then, take it light. But take it. Absolutely, man. It was good to see you guys tonight. This was